Raynday, thank you so much for sitting down with me ahead of the ALGS Championship. I'm excited. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. Tom, thanks for having me. Like I said, I was complimenting you and your casting, and you've been a part of the scene for a while, so I appreciate having a chance to finally talk ahead of our big week.
Yeah, I was just wondering, obviously, this championship is not just a big competition, but it's the culmination of a whole year of, this wonderful ALGS esport that we all follow. Just wondered what your personal highlight has been so far of this third year of ALGS.
Man, I think the fact that we've been able to do a full circuit of live events has really elevated Apex in a year where it's sometimes difficult. That third year is often either kind of a make or break year for an esport. People kind of see that it's got potential and it keeps going to year 10. And then sometimes people say, is this really carrying? And I think with the live events in London and servicing that community in the UK and now in Birmingham for championships so well this year, I feel like we've really instigated this fandom that maybe wouldn't have been there. We knew it was online, but we weren't able to really see it in person and feel it throughout the venue. And I just feel that this year particularly, we took everything up one other level. And for me, that gave a lot of our fans, and I think as talent and all the teams in EA, a lot of hope at the future and the brightness of what Apex Esports will continually become, especially if we're able to take this to different venues, different places around the world. The fans have been just a huge highlight for me, and being able to do 3 events here with championships coming up. That's what we've been dreaming for. That's what we waited throughout COVID for. So to finally have it, I think has been a dream come true for all of us.
Yeah, and I think I felt that the players have really raised their game this year. I was just wondering if there was any particular players or teams that have particularly surprised you this year.
Well, to me, I've had 2 teams that kind of come to mind with this. One is Alliance. Alliance to me in kind of the champion of EMEA in my eyes, the team that can actually get over the hump and claim a trophy outside of Dark0, outside of TSM, or outside of maybe a really strong, high-performing APAC North team like Fnatic, who's top 10 to every event that they've been in terms of a LAN. But Alliance has really caught my intrigue for a couple of reasons. One, Yuki has this clutch factor that you need in a team. It doesn't have to have every player have it, but Yuki has this special ability to take on the big moments and come out on top, which very few players have. Hal probably being one of them, Sweet actually being one of them as well. And Hawkeyes has been finding his leadership style, and he's used it to become a different type of leader, someone who's more patient, who's more analytical. He finds actually new team compositions that they helped bring Rampart into EMEA in this split, and they also helped bring Ash into it. It didn't stay, but they experimented and they actually kind of trailblazed. And for me, that put Alliance at the forefront of things. And when Effect came in, and then he had that performance in groups at LAN, I thought this team has everything. So they've really surprised me. The question for championships, though, Tom, is can Effect become the group stage player that he is in the finals, because that's where he kind of fell asleep. We didn't really see much of him. If he can do that, what he did for 3 days for the 4th, or now for 4 days for the 5th, they look like a team to beat, and they've really, really surprised me there. Another just honorable mention, I think, is Xset. I think Xset and FaZe kind of come to mind. Xset has been a team that has been so close to the top at these tournaments. I love the way that they've organized themselves around really a group camaraderie. They feel like a band of brothers. They operate a little differently than some of the bigger personalities in our scene. And they are a little more reserved, with Hodzik actually being one of the more main personalities, their coach, on the team than some of the actual players. But I think that their skill and their just consistency has always been really impressive this split, particularly and this year. So for them to try to finally get that trophy, to get a championship trophy, I think that would be a successful year for Xset to have been so close, yet so far each time.
Who would you say, if you had to predict a top 5, who would you say would be in that right now?
Who would it be? Well, a TSM and Dark0 for me, 100%. I would put a Fnatic from APAC North. I mean, their consistency is admirable. It is unbelievable. They are going to be in finals day, and they're going to be top 10 no matter what. Outside of that, I think Split 2 gave us some pretty clear direction. I think one team that might switch is FaZe. I think Xset would still be in there if it ended if I had to go today. And then the one team I would switch out and put on the bubble is maybe FaZe, because they had a really great performance for their first time as that squad. I'm not sure they can repeat it. I hope they can. I think Phony needs to continually step up into his leadership. We've got to talk about Phony like we talk about Hal and Sweet and Hockeys and Yuki. Like, we have to talk about him that way for FaZe to be that level. We know Snipedown has the ability, and we just know Frex has so much. He's got so much experience and so much flexibility. He could play anything, and so they really just need that from their captain. And so that's a bubble for me. I would, I don't know. I mean, Oxygen surprised us. They were phenomenal. I was really excited about that. Aiden is in vain, and just the way that they play together. But I think if I'm going to give you that, honestly, I'm going to give you 4 instead of 5. I think that 5th place is up for grabs, and I think that's what makes it so fun. We've got South America trying to prove themselves too. They didn't even make it into the finals, so maybe a team from there will have a surprise performance.
Yeah, I think notably someone that we haven't mentioned yet is NRG. I just wondered where you think they've sat, because they kind of felt like they went from hero to zero back to hero again, kind of.
Yeah.
But there've been a lot of changes. There's been iShiny joining the team. I just wondered, nobody seems to be talking about them. Could that benefit them?
I think it's always better when NRG is not the focus of the narrative. Whenever I find, and this is over 3 years of watching them and knowing how talented they are with different variations of their lineup, to Frex being in that lineup as well, the Dizzy at times, like early on, like, you're just like, okay, wait a second, this is a team that always has talent, but when it is time for them to show up in the big days, and that's why championships are taken, they're not given to anybody. There's a reason we have only like 2 teams basically winning the biggest of big trophies when it comes to LAN. There's just that extra little thing that they need. And I don't know if it's something from Sweet or if it's something from another piece that they're adding. I do think, though, that NRG does better when they're under the radar, because they like that underdog feeling. They like when people aren't paying as much attention to them. And I think that if they can just do similarly to what they did in our Split 1 playoffs in February and be in the points race, be in match point, they've got a chance. But they have to perform. And Tom, that's something that I would not bet on. I would just say that it can happen. But I always wait to see what they're going to do and kind of how they're feeling on the day before I make that judgment call.
And then something that has been much talked about after Dog0's last LAN win is that IGL #1 spot. Everybody talks about Hal, they talk about Sweet, they talk about Zer0. You've also mentioned Phony as well, that should be in that category. Who do you think is the best IGL in the world?
To me, it's very simple. Hal and Zer0 are the best IGLs in the world. We're going to find out who is the best at championships. We will find out, because ultimately what matters is results in competitive esports. And how you get there, that's a great piece of conversation, but the results live on in history. And Zer0 so far, he's taken 3 out of 4 of our LAN wins. But here's the thing. He wasn't around when Hal was doing that before Zer0 was involved in the pro league in the way that he is now. So you have to say, you can't discredit Hal playing and winning with Alberlelli, winning with Snipedown, winning with Verholz, 3 different types of lineups, still getting the job done. But in this modern era, you cannot discredit Zer0 getting the job done with JMW as a sub, getting Jin Burton back with Sharky and winning again in champs, stunning the world. Like, this can't be happening 2 times in a row. And then for the 3rd time out of 4 with TSM sneaking in there in February, winning again, this time with Zainu after Sharky took himself out and they had that couple of weeks with Rambo. I mean, this is clearly, for me, a showcase of both of those leaders' abilities to adapt. And a battle royale, it's just about who can adapt the best. Those two have proven that whether it's a lineup, whether it's a zone, whether it's a group, they know how to adapt. And so that's, to me, where the conversation ends. In championships, if either one of them win, that's going to settle it, at least until next year.
Yeah, I think, we were talking about, before we started, about how long you've been involved with Apex. And you were obviously involved with the Poland Invitational all the way back at the start. You've been involved with the ALGS all the way through the COVID era. You've obviously seen, every single LAN event, all of these Dog0 and TSM wins.
Yeah.
I just wondered what you thought had improved the most, or the ALGS has grown in the most, in what department since you first got involved to now heading into, probably the biggest LAN the game has ever had.
Yeah. Well, one thing I was actually pondering in terms of just the growth that happens naturally is when you give an esport, you give something enough time. And this is, I've been around several esports that have started. I covered another game called Paladins that from inception to the end of it, I was a part of that. And one of the things you have in an early phase is you have the stories developing, but there's not history. Right now, we're actually at the place where when this year happens and it ends and we see championships, we're starting to have some like halls of history of the ALGS that now create these bigger stories, these overarching themes. As a book, you have your main kind of plot, but you have maybe part 1 or act 1, act 2, act 3. We're starting to get those acts, which give us the bigger bridge to what this is all about. So for me, I think we've grown there. Just surviving during that COVID era and really thriving this year. I think it's just been phenomenal. I think the team has gone through a lot of adjustments from a talent side, obviously from a production side, in terms of who's throwing the events, who's producing the events, who's working the events. But I think there's been a really nice core developed that has the stability now to help make sure that we can continually focus and raise the game in terms of the storytelling, the narratives, the experience at the LAN. And, because anything that starts early, you kind of have to work out some of those issues and those things that keep changing. And so I feel like we've gone to the other side, so to speak. We've like exited the other side of the storm. And now, we've got some sunlight, some nice weather. And so I feel like the future is really, really bright for the ALGS. And, we're just starting to pick up speed.
Yeah, I'm glad that the ALGS can bring nice weather to the UK because we've certainly not had much of that recently.
We try.
Yeah.
It was really hot last time I was there, man. Maybe a little too hot.
Yeah, it's only hot when you're here, apparently. So I'm glad you're all coming back in a couple of weeks. I also just wondered sort of how the ALGS has developed in game. What has been your favourite meta to watch? We've seen several now at this point. What do you is there one that you particularly hawk back to, or do you like it how things are?
I am a hopeless romantic, Tom. I am a sucker for what's happening in the moment because I know it's fleeting, right? I'm like a sucker for the memories that are being created now because I know that they will never exist again in the future the same way they are now. So I really appreciate every meta. And even when Caustic came in, and this was maybe year 1 towards the end or start of year 2, it was like not something you want for the game forever. But I knew it's like now Caustic gets this moment. We get to see this change. And I love seeing our players adapt. I think maybe the most exciting one, though, for me, was the start of the Seer meta, which really introduced, and I always credit his Watson and Furia for this because I think they pioneered it from LCQ all the way into what would become the only way to play Apex for a year. It has been, I'm kind of starting this now, the year of Seer. I mean, that is what this last year has been, all the way from championships where they place second just off points and just fragging people out to now this next championships where we may actually see some games without Seer in the lobby for the first time after this recent patch. So for me, I think that has been the most influential, the most impactful one. But maybe from a nostalgic perspective, I miss, Pathfinders flying around all the time, zip lines. Little Watson, the early Poland, Gibraltar meta with Wraith, Watson, and Pathfinder. But I don't know if we'll ever get back to that one.
I know you've said you live in the moment, but I just wondered if there are any particular players or team combinations that you miss.
That I miss? Ooh, that's a great question. From the perspective of a team composition, I think, like I said, I love seeing Pathfinder out there. I don't miss Gibraltar at all. I think he's in a good... I hope he does. I actually am... That's one character I'm like, I'm okay not seeing any more defensive bombardments and bubble fights. I did see a lot of those. But no, I think for me, like, everyone who is here is meant to be here still. Like, I think everyone contributed a lot to Apex in the growing years. We had a lot of players come and go. Almost all these content creators as well. Like, I remember, I think Noko was at Poland as representing, playing as a team. I forget who he was with, but I think it was maybe an old Luminosity or something like that. I mean, and he's a great streamer now.
CLG, maybe?
Yeah. CLG, I think is what it was.
Big, I think, right?
And so I knew there was an LG in there. I forgot the C. So, sure, do I miss all of those people coming in? Yeah, there's something that, you'll never be able to replace with that like kind of early group. But I really do appreciate who's stuck around, because honestly, like, I think that's where the legacy of the game comes from. The people and the players who stick around, from the talent to the product, everyone involved, the reporters, everyone who kind of stays with it. That to me is where the legacy of a game is derived. So, I do appreciate it, but yeah, I actually don't have anyone top of mind that I miss right now. And, I think that's just a testament to giving support to the people who are here.
Yeah, I think, you've been...
What about you? You miss somebody?
Oh, who do I miss? Oh, I miss Snipe and Hal playing together.
Snipe and Hal playing together.
Something about opening Twitter after a day of Pro League and just seeing how they've been going at each other that is just irreplaceable, I think.
That is irreplaceable. I agree with that.
You've been, absolutely one of the mainstays of the ALGS production team. You've been involved with the game for a really long time. Obviously now we're into Apex's 5th, 6th LAN. People understand what a LAN is like. They understand how a LAN is produced. But what goes on behind the scenes? We talk about boot camps. We talk about all these things that people are getting much more used to. Where do players go? How do they prepare? Do they scrim? Do they not scrim? What happens for casters? How do you prepare? What are you doing in the days building up to the champs to be ready for your big performance?
No, it's amazing. I got asked this question the other day on stream, and I tried to break it down into two kind of answers. The first answer is every caster, I believe, has a way that, like, every student, right, studies a particular way that's actually more effective for them. Some students love the all-nighters. Some students like kind of pacing it out, you know what I mean? And so that's something that I think is casting. It usually those tendencies stay the same. I know a lot of casters who create complete Excel sheets. They know every point of data ever. They don't remember it, but they're checking their notes while they're casting and talking about it. That's how they want to do it. For me, I've always been, I need big picture. I need the big plots. Need to understand the dynamics from watching, from reading, from feeling. Because as an athlete too, Tom, I came from playing, football, soccer. I had a game last night. Like, it's a part of my DNA to read a game as it's being played. Not to do too much of the, mentalization of it, but to actually, like, get my analysis from watching. So I do a ton of watching VODs. I usually crank up channels on my YouTube, videos on my YouTube channel that are more analytical based. I'll watch TSM, I'll look at the meta, I'll see, what is the feeling that these players are having. So then I feel like I'm endemic to what's going on. It's about kind of shutting down the outside world and becoming a part of these players' journeys as much as you can, knowing, you're not in the scrims with them and you're not putting those extra hours offline that they're putting in. The other thing I like to do is I like to be prepared enough to improv, which is maybe counterintuitive to people. But when I get to the point of I'm very prepared, like I know the basics and I'm really ready to kind of talk about these stories and carry us through. As a host, particularly, I have a lot of my job is also making sure our production hits its beats with, whether it's Monster, whether it's, WD Black, whether it's, every person on the analyst desk getting something before we have to throw to a trailer for a new gameplay component coming out based on Respawn wanting to show that on the desk. A lot of it is that, but a lot of the greatest moments happen when they're unplanned. They're not planned. And I think that I see sometimes newer casters jump in with like, here's what I want to say, and here's an essay about it. It's so good. And you may not even have 15 seconds. So as much as you might like that, you got to be ready to go with the punches. And so for me, I kind of almost preempt this concept that I may not have all the time I want, may not be able to say it, but I'm prepared and I'm ready to go. And I think that level of like mental flexibility is something that I work on really hard. So I really focus on diet, on exercise, on my overall life, so that when I show up to the show, I'm the best version of me possible to put out the best content, at a moment's notice, because you just can't prep for everything. We actually don't know what's going to happen.
What's something that you think that you've improved on from that Poland Invitational to now? If you went back and watched, your first,
oh my God,
your first few casts, your first few interviews, what's something that you'd say, yeah, I've definitely improved in that regard?
Yeah, I think in my I actually watched the Poland thing over Split 2, and one of the beautiful things about it is that I got to see how baby-faced I looked. First of all, my facial hair game has improved dramatically. I was clean shaven then. I looked like a child. But what I really think that I focused on a lot is when I can get into a role and I can honestly understand where I'm doing, because the ALGS, for those who don't know, we've all done every role. So sometimes we're analyzing, sometimes we're casting, sometimes we're hosting, and my journey has been to commentate as I come from being a commentator, but also really shift into learning the nuances of hosting for the ALGS. To me, I feel like I've really developed in being able to help drive not only storylines, but important beats on camera for us to whether feel the emotion of a moment in an in-game interview, like when TSM won. I look back at those interviews and think that was phenomenal. And I also look back at some of the Sweden interviews when Dark0 first won. I have people coming up like Zero's dad, who in Zero in stream said, "Raynday, you're my dad's favorite person." I was like, "Why?" He said, "Because the interview you did with me in Sweden and the way that you kind of access that emotion and that moment to allow me to shine." So I think I've just become more aware of how to be a facilitator on the desk, and even in commentating, and that has really been a great lesson for me in esports and just in broadcast to help make other people shine, because in that process you shine too.
How different is it casting a LAN event to online? Obviously there's things like in-person interviews and really more of an emphasis on the individuals, but what are some of those things that maybe people wouldn't realize are just completely different?
I mean, I think what's completely different is the physical aspect of being able to communicate non-verbally. We talk, like, there's this stat I think a lot of people know through growing up, like 90% or 80% of communication is non-verbal, right? And you're like, what? But really, it is. There's so many cues that, and I think it was funny with Dia, I had a chance to commentate with him, and we had commentated online in the split, but at LAN, I would do this to him, right? And the first time I did it, he was like, "Sorry, I don't know what that is." And I said, "No, this just means like finish your thought and like toss it back to me because I have to throw to something." And so he was like, "Oh my God, wait, that's so easy. Like, yeah, that's amazing." And it helps because you can kind of, what I'll do mostly is I literally am like an air traffic controller. I'm like, this, I'll do a look, I'll do a, and that's how my desk and I work, which is impossible to do online. You just literally can't. You have to over talk. You have to you don't want the dead space and the delay. So you have to kind of fill the void. A lot of people get scared because the moment you have a co-commentator, if you take the space and you just go like a moment needs a little silence in commentary, they start talking because they think you're done talking and they can't see you. Whereas, Onset and Gaskin, they're great at this as well. They know when to let the other person stop talking, but they're going to keep continuing in a few moments and not try to interrupt and fill that. And a lot of that is the in-person back and forth. You're holding it back. And they get, and you're basically having this whole other language. So for me, it's kind of like doubling up. You're literally doubling up on your opportunity. And then the third thing, the crowd. When you have an amazing moment at home, I'm hyping it up, and like my fiance might be telling me, "Hey, keep it down, I'm on a work call," right? Like that's the versus in LAN, the crowd is screaming, the energy in the building. You feel like you're a part of this group experience, which if you ever seen a movie and you all laughed, you ever seen a movie, you all cried. It's a bigger than just an individual experience. You feel that moment. That's what it's like being in the building. And so I would say everything about esports gets better in person.
And then finally, the football fan in me would absolutely die if I didn't ask you what position you play when you play.
Yeah.
Football being soccer, obviously, I have to call it the proper British term.
So I'm a goal scorer. So I grew up as a forward, a striker. And then what happened as I aged into, I played for our U17 national team, and I won a couple of youth national championships, went to U18 men's national team for the US, and then I went to UCLA. I was drafted on my senior year to DC United. One of my really good buddies my same year, he just won the MLS Cup with LAFC. He's still on LAFC. So a lot of people in that range went on to do really, really well. when I went to college, we actually both started playing wing because they already had the senior kind of established strikers there. And then my senior year, I played in this kind of withdrawn striker role, a little bit like how Messi likes to tuck in and find the ball. I'm not a huge guy, but I'm really, really technical, great dribbler, and offensive minded. So I know how to make plays happen, break down players, create opportunities. So when I was in that position and prioritized, I mean, game over. So I love it, and I still love to play, man. It's like, Tom, you've probably done something in your past. It's bizarre having 15 years of like mastery in one thing that you just now don't really use anymore. But I feel like esports has allowed me to at least take a lot of the principles of what it's like to play a team sport and be competitive, and then apply it to, my understanding of what these guys and girls are going through in the esports scene. I
was always a defender, so you've got me sweating now that I have to face somebody like you.
Well, we'll have to kick a ball around, man.
Yeah. There you go then. What would be your ALGS 5-a-side team?
Oh my God.
Yeah,
I think I got to get on. I got to get. You know what?
Pick 4 of the people.
Here, okay, so I'm gonna go with talent here, because I think Onset and Gaskin, because they're British. I have to give them the love there. I will say though, Gaskin played, and he's fast. Like, him and I had a race to our hotel across the street in Raleigh last championships. And he almost beat me. And I was like not expecting that at all, because I usually don't lose in sprints. But he is fast. So Gaskin 100% in there. I think I'll throw, I feel like Tiff is pretty athletic. She will try very hard. I don't know if she has any football experience, but she works out a lot. She lifts a lot. So she's going to have the stamina. She's going to have the strength. Oh, and then at striker. Oh, you know what? No, at defense, I'm putting Vicky. I'm putting Vicky Kitty right there, because you know what? She's going to intimidate. She's going to be talking. And when somebody tries to score a goal, she's going to whip out her phone and show them a 45-minute clip of her basically playing Halo or Apex or something in ranked, and distract them all.
Well, I thought that was a meme, but I saw Vicky
it's real
in London, and guess what she was doing? Phone
it's
was
real.
out. Players were gathered around the phone. Everyone was watching Vicky play. It's brilliant.
It's real, man.
Yeah, I think I'm having fun FPS as a big striker and taking care of that Vicky.
Oh yeah, I love it, man. I love it. Well, one of my hopes and dreams is one of these days we do something, whether it's again on U.S. soil or a place that we can actually play, and we get that little ALGS, talent or pro game going on, because I feel like that's content that is a win right there, and it's very low budget, and people would love to see it, and we'd love to do it.
Well, there you go. Let's hope someone's watching and taking notes, eh? Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. I'm really excited to see you do your thing, as always, in Birmingham. It's going to be a really, really exciting event, and we'll see who settles that ultimate decider, who is going to bring it home.
I can't wait. Tom, thank you so much for your time today, man, and I'm excited. I know you'll be watching, and for everyone watching back at home, I think this is going to be the best tournament that Apex Legends has ever had.